Today I want to teach you all how I went from 0 to 150 rental properties in just 2 years using the BRRRR strategy. My name is Joseph Back with Rapid Fire Investments. So what is the BRRRR strategy? Well, it's an acronym that stands for Buy, Renovate, Rent, Refinance, Repeat. And it's an amazing strategy that allows you to scale to a lot of rental properties very quickly with very little capital. So let me take you back in the DeLorean, back to 2018 when I bought my very first rental property. I just graduated from the University of Kentucky, didn't have any credit, didn't have any money, but had some hustle and really wanted to buy some real estate. So I got started by listening to BiggerPockets and learning from them, and that's where I first discovered the BRRRR strategy and really found out its power. But I still didn't have that initial capital I needed to buy that first property. To do a deal for the BRRRR strategy, you either need to have the deal or you need to have the money. I had the deal. And so I went to my dad for the money. A W-2 worker at a factory there in Lexington, Kentucky, where I'm from. Although he didn't have a ton of capital sitting aside either, he had built a lot of equity in his personal house, the house that I actually grew up in. And I convinced him to take out a home equity line of credit. And we went in together on a 50-50 partnership and bought our very first rental property. It was an off-market deal. And I had to hustle pretty hard to get this deal. So what I did was, I was a member of a local Facebook investor group. I'd highly recommend you guys join one of those. A lot of transactions get done off-market in those Facebook groups. What happened was a burnout landlord, just had to go through a number of evictions, and he was done. And he posted a list, an Excel sheet of 40 properties he wanted to sell there in the Lexington market. This was at like 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. As soon as I saw it, I saw there might be some opportunity because some of the rents, were upwards of $1,000 to $1,100 a month. And some of these houses he was only asking for $90,000 to $100,000, which means they met the 1% rule. Effectively, the 1% rule is property is a good deal if you can get it for 100 times the monthly rent. So if it rents for $1,000 a month, if you can be in it for $100,000, it should cash flow pretty decent. And so immediately I knew there might be some deals here, but I really wanted to dive in and figure out what were the best deals out of these 40. And so I actually went in, I didn't have access to the MLS, I didn't really know how to use Zillow, but I knew how to use our local tax assessor. And I actually went in and comped, did comparables and found out the value of every single one of those 40 properties. I was up to about 3 a.m. in the morning, kind of looking on the tax assessor on the map, trying to find all the properties nearby that had sold so I could try to come to what I thought these properties were worth, because the key to the BRRRR strategy is you gotta have some built-in equity. So if the house is worth 100, you need to be buying it for $80,000 or less. I did my analysis and I identified 3 or 4 of those properties that they would cash flow really well because they were better than the 1% rule. And I knew I could buy them for below 80% of value. The property I ended up buying was a 4-bed, 1-bath Cape Cod style 1940 built house there in Lexington. I bought it for $69,000 using that home equity line of credit. And the great thing is there was already a tenant in the property paying rent. At the time, she was paying $850 a month, well above the 1% rule. But the kicker to this deal was she was a Section 8 tenant. What a Section 8 tenant is basically the government is assisting that tenant in paying their rent. So sometimes the government may be stepping in and paying half of their rent and the tenant themselves is responsible for the other half. Sometimes the government will pay all of their rent. In this particular situation, the government is paying 97% of her rent. It's a pretty good situation because I can count on the government that they're going to pay. And the really cool thing about Section 8 is you can ask for a rent increase every year. And this previous landlord hadn't done that in 3 years in this property. It had been at $850 with Section 8 for 3 years. So me being the aggressive young man I was, before I even closed on the property, I went and filed a petition to raise the rent with the local Section 8 office. And I shot for the moon. I tried to say, hey, you haven't raised rent in 3 years. I think rent should be $1,150 on this house. I knew that probably wasn't gonna work. But they countered back to me and said, hey, that's a little bit ridiculous to raise it $300 a month in one raise, but we'll meet you in the middle and we'll raise the rent to $1,000 a month. And remember, the government's paying 97%, so they're paying $970 of that $1,000 a month. That tenant didn't pay, didn't bother me too much. And so I was able to increase the value with that as well because before we even closed on the property, I'd raised the rent $150 a month. So we closed on the house with cash. So we used the home equity line of credit. We pulled cash out of my dad's house and used that cash to buy the property. It was cash flowing, it was doing well. And now is onto normally would be the renovate section of the BRRRR strategy. This house was turnkey. It didn't need any renovation. It was already in great shape, already had a tenant in it. It was already rented. So we skipped straight to the refinance section of the BRRRR strategy. We went to a local bank and we said, hey, we've got this cash flowing rental property. We want to get a cash out refinance loan on this property. They said, all right, we will do that. We can give you up to 80% of what the property appraises for. So they sent an appraiser out to appraise the property, determine what the fair market value is for that house. And that appraiser came back and said, the fair market value is $100,000. So if we wanted to, we could get $80,000 as a mortgage from this local bank, which not only would have paid off that home equity line of credit, but also would have put $10,000 into our pockets, or $5,000 each. We wanted to be a little conservative on this first one and not lever up too much, so we just took out $70,000 as a mortgage. Paid off the home equity line of credit so we could go do this exact same strategy again, while also having a property that now cash flows a few $100s every single month, and we have zero capital invested. And not only does it cash flow every month and it's gonna be a profit every year, but we're also gonna show an actual tax loss on this property every year because we're gonna be depreciating it every single month. That's the power of real estate. Not only can you lever up and maximize your return, but you're not gonna pay taxes on any of that return because of the depreciation that you can take with that real estate. So now I've completed my very first BRRRR. I've got one cash flowing rental property that I have no money invested into that's putting money into both mine and my dad's pocket every single month. Now I had proof of concept. That first deal is the hardest, but now I need to figure out how to scale this. How can I do this over and over and over and have multiple of these going on at the same time? Well, I knew me and my dad had the $70,000 and that was good for about one deal at a time, but I need to figure out a way to scale further. And that's when I learned about hard money lenders. So what is a hard money lender? Well, a hard money lender is simply a private individual, typically someone who's a little older, has a big nest egg, whether it be from retirement or a lot of times they're previous real estate investors who got tired of dealing with tenants, sold all their properties, and now lend money to other investors to allow them to do deals. So for example, I started networking around in a local real estate group, and I met an individual who previously actually was an investor in a CPA. He had since retired and was lending money out to other investors in the group. Typically these loans he was doing were a little higher interest than what you could get at the bank, but it's very quick, and he's able to lend money not only on the purchase, but on the rehab of these properties as well. And so, for example, a deal we did, after I made that connection, was there was a duplex in Lexington, Kentucky, and this property was in really bad shape. It actually had been condemned by the city. We knew we could get it for a really good deal, so I went in and I could buy the property for $35,000. Now again, it's in very bad shape. It needs a lot of renovation. But I knew that once fixed up, each side was 2 beds, 1 bath, and I could rent them each for about $650 to $700 a month. So total, I could get about $1,300 to $1,400 a month, and I knew that duplex, once fixed up, would appraise for upwards of $130,000 to $150,000. Although the renovation was steep, I met with a contractor, got a quote, and realized it was about a $50,000 to $60,000 renovation. So if I could buy it for $35,000, put, let's call it $60,000 into it, I'm all in for $95,000. If the property's worth $130,000, $140,000, and I can pull out 80% from that cash out refinance we talked about before, I can be in this deal for no money at the end of the day. I need to find someone who could lend me that $95,000. I talked to this hard money lender and he said, sure, I believe in the deal and I'm willing to lend. And so he was willing to lend the full $95,000 to me at a rate of 12% a year. So I would pay him 1% a month. What does that look like? He gave me $95,000 whenever we purchased the property. He got a first mortgage on the property to secure his investment. So if I ever didn't pay, he could foreclose on the property. In the meantime, I was paying him 1% a month or 12% a year, which is $950 a month. And I simply just included those interest payments into my calculation for the total all-in cost for this property because I knew I was going to need to use hard money lenders for this property. We got started, we ran into roadblocks, but eventually after about 3 or 4 months, we got the property totally renovated. We rented out the right side and then the left side, and we're getting about $1,300 a month. I went to a local bank, the same local bank I worked with before, just establishing that local bank relationship, and you'll find that that local bank will lend to you over and over and over again. The first loan's the hardest to get with a local bank, but once they trust you and they believe in you, they see the proof of concept, they'll lend to you over and over. And so this bank, they said, hey, we'll give you 80% again. And sure enough, the property appraised for $145,000. So we were able again to pull out more than we had in it. But again, that's up to you if you want to be as aggressive as possible and actually pull cash out of the deal. I like to just get my money back, pay off the hard money lender, and be in the property for no money out of my pocket whatsoever. So that's what we did. We had another property that now is cash flowing positive every month that we have no money invested into. And I just simply repeated the strategy over and over and over. And in order to scale my portfolio, I kept doing it on a bigger and bigger scale. All the way up to doing it, the largest property I did this on was a 12-unit apartment complex. It wasn't any harder than a single-family property. You'll realize that just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's more difficult. The BRRRR strategy is amazing at allowing you to increase the velocity of your capital. If you're putting 20% down on every property you buy, it's going to take you a very long time to scale to 100, 200, 300 units. But if you can take that same capital and buy 10 houses with it, over the course of 2 years, it allows you to buy a lot more, a lot quicker. From there, I continue to scale and actually do multiple projects at once. And at any given time now, I have between 10 and 15 renovations and BRRRRs going on at the same time. Now that can sound daunting, and trust me, sometimes it is, but the key is to establish a really good team. That's the only way you can scale using the BRRRR strategy. You've got to have a really good contractor, and if you're doing a lot of jobs, probably 2 really good contractors. You need to have a rock star property management company. Without property management, there's no reason to buy rentals in the first place. They are the key to your property's cash flowing. And then 3, you've got to have a really good agent or wholesaler to help you find deals on a consistent basis. Because if you establish that team and then you're not able to provide them deals to work on and they're not making any money, they're going to go find other avenues and it's going to be hard to keep them retained. So this is the way I was able to scale from 0 to 150 units. And now that I've got those 150 units, I can keep scaling if I wanted to. Or the beauty of it is I have 150 tenants now without me doing anything, just waking up out of bed. They're paying rent on 150 different properties. They're paying down the debt every single month, about $20,000. So if my properties don't appreciate, I don't make any cash flow, but I simply make my mortgage payments from those tenants paying the rent, I'm adding $240,000 a year to my net worth with no appreciation and no cash flow. The beauty, I still get cash flow from these properties from anywhere from $100 to $200 a month on each of these. And I've also seen great appreciation as these properties are increasing in value every year as inflation takes off. So overall, the BRRRR strategy is an amazing strategy to allow you to scale. And once you establish that big portfolio of properties, the unit economics of scale allow you to grow your net worth like a snowball. It grows faster and faster and faster the more properties you get. Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're listening to and learning, I highly encourage you guys, please hit the subscribe button below, give us a like, and write a comment on any questions you have. I'll be happy to jump in there and reply. Thanks.